Egil Skallagrimsson, first appears to modern readers with an axe in one hand and intricate verse in the other. That combination feels astonishingly personal, yet nearly everything surrounding him reaches us through a 13th-century saga. The question is not whether warrior or poet is the correct label. It is how inherited poetry, family memory, and literary design were assembled into one commanding personality. Egil's saga sets its protagonist in the 10th-century Atlantic world of Iceland, Norway, and England. Its surviving prose belongs to a period roughly 3 centuries later. Embedded poems may be older than the narrative framing them, but their dates and attributions require separate judgment. The resulting Egil is neither a transparent biography nor a wholly invented character. He is a layered construction whose components carry different degrees of historical weight. The saga begins before Egil's birth, tracing his family through conflict, migration, and settlement. Skallagrim, his father, leaves Norway and establishes a household at Borg in western Iceland. This long prehistory ties Egil's temperament to ancestors portrayed as powerful, difficult, and resistant to kings. It also builds a political explanation for the family's distance from Norwegian royal authority. Genealogy here does more than identify relatives. It organizes recurring behavior across generations. The saga describes Egil as physically formidable, precocious in verse, volatile, and dangerously proud. Childhood episodes forecast the adult, rather than recording development with modern biographical detachment. Still, medieval Icelandic authors often worked with real genealogies and remembered disputes. Egil's adult journeys connect Icelandic landholders with courts, trading routes, warfare, and royal politics. He serves or fights alongside patrons in the British Isles and becomes entangled with Norwegian rulers. Repeatedly, the narrative tests what an independent chieftain owes to kings who command wider resources. Violence settles some confrontations, but poetry changes the outcome of others. That alternation makes his two identities operate as one political toolkit. Skaldic verse was not ornamental entertainment detached from power. Poets praised patrons, commemorated deeds, sharpened insult, and converted reputation into language designed for remembrance. The most demanding meters constrained syllables, stress, alliteration, and internal rhyme. Complex word order and poetic vocabulary could preserve lines through trained memory while complicating later transmission. A competent stanza therefore represents craft, social access, and a claim about its occasion. It does not automatically prove that the named poet composed it exactly when the saga says. Manuscript scribes transmitted Egil's verses inside a prose work with its own dramatic agenda. Some stanzas fit their contexts closely, almost as if prose and poem explain each other. Others contain linguistic or metrical features scholars examine for signs of age. Dating Skaldic poetry is difficult because archaic forms could be preserved, imitated, normalized, or corrupted. Attribution may rest upon the saga itself rather than independent contemporary testimony. Each poem must consequently be assessed as a textual object, not merely accepted as Egil's recorded voice. Head Ransom supplies the most theatrical union of poetry and survival. According to the saga, Egil falls into the power of King Eirik Bloodaxe at York. Facing execution, he composes a praise poem overnight and wins release. His friend Arnbjorn helps create the opportunity, linking poetic performance with patronage and negotiation. The episode perfectly demonstrates the saga's thesis that verbal mastery can redirect lethal politics. Its historical core is possible, since skalds did seek favor through praise. The overnight composition and precise crisis remain claims of the later narrative. No English record independently describes Egil performing before Eirik. Eirik's rule at York is supported by numismatic and written evidence, although its chronology is complicated. That secure political setting makes the episode plausible without authenticating its choreography. The poem known as Hofudlausen, or Head Ransom, also raises textual questions. Its meter differs from the most characteristic court form and reflects influence associated with praise poetry in England. Some scholars accept a substantial 10th-century origin, while others question aspects of its transmission or attribution. Perhaps the saga preserves an old poem while constructing a sharpened occasion around it. Alternatively, poem and episode may have developed together before surviving manuscripts fixed their relationship. Another major work, Aramjarnarkvida, praises Aramjorn as a generous and steadfast friend. Its damaged manuscript survival leaves portions difficult to reconstruct. The poem reinforces a world where loyalty between elite men competes with royal hostility. If early and authentically Egil's, it offers evidence for his patronal relationships. Even then, praise poetry speaks strategically rather than delivering neutral autobiography. The poet magnifies generosity because public reputation is the poem's currency. Sonatorrek moves into a profoundly different register than court praise. That narrative connects this lament with the deaths of Egil's sons, especially Bodvar's drowning. Its speaker struggles with loss, poetic ability, and a difficult relationship with Odin. The composition feels intimate enough to invite direct access to Egil's grief. Yet emotional intensity cannot by itself establish authorship or date. Scholars have debated the poem's textual history, religious language, and place within the saga. Some regard its core as old and compatible with pre-Christian Skaldic tradition. Others emphasize possible later shaping and the problems of manuscript transmission. The responsible conclusion preserves the poem's power without turning literary voice into courtroom identification. Within the prose, Sonatorrek also changes Egil's scale. The aggressive traveler becomes an aging father whose skill barely contains bereavement. His daughter Thorgerd draws him back from refusing food and toward composing the lament. It is beautifully structured, which is precisely why historical caution remains necessary. The saga's Egil is built through contrasts that recur too artfully to be accidental. He is ugly in description, but capable of verbal beauty. He resists kings while depending upon aristocratic friends and audiences. His violence threatens social order, whereas his poetry converts conflict into negotiable reputation. Old age weakens his body, even as remembered stanzas preserve his presence. These contrasts make a compelling novelistic character before that category existed in its modern form. Calling him a saga construction therefore describes craftsmanship, not fabrication alone. The prose author had access to traditions attached to Borg and the Myrar district. Landholding families preserved ancestry because descent and property carried legal and social consequences. Place names, genealogies, and regional knowledge give the narrative a densely localized foundation. Real landscapes can support invented scenes, just as authentic memories can enter shaped plots. The authorship of Egil's saga itself remains anonymous. Snorri Sturluson has often been proposed because of style, learning, family connections, and regional associations. The attribution is influential but unproven, since no medieval statement securely names him as author. Treating Snorri's authorship as fact merely replaces one uncertain biography with another. What survives is a work produced within Iceland's 13th-century culture of manuscripts and political reflection. That era knew escalating conflicts among chieftains and close engagement with Norwegian kingship. A story about proud Icelanders negotiating royal pressure could speak forcefully to such readers. Its 10th-century setting did not prevent it from examining later concerns. Archaeology provides the farms, halls, tools, burials, and trade connections of the society around the narrative. It can illuminate what elite households at places like Borg required to function. It cannot match a particular weapon or drinking horn to one unmarked Saga episode. No securely identified grave settles Egil's appearance, medical condition, or fighting career. Later stories about his bones belong to textual tradition, not verified osteological evidence. The strongest case for a historical Egil rests upon converging genealogy, localized memory, and attributed early poetry. The strongest case for construction lies in patterned characterization, retrospective prose, and scenes serving exact thematic purposes. These explanations do not cancel one another because authors construct narratives from inherited material. An earlier manuscript or independently transmitted stanza could clarify how much existed before the saga. Without it, individual poems deserve conclusions narrower than the complete character built around them. Egil may well have been a 10th-century Icelander, skald, traveler, and formidable political actor. The warrior poet remembered today, however, is the saga's deliberate achievement. His possible voice survives inside a later author's architecture, where every stanza also builds the man who supposedly spoke it.